This is Dr. Peggy Semingson. I'm in the College of Education. I train teachers and I teach 100% online. This presentation is high engagement synchronous learning in a literacy focused online course. So the class was designed to teach future elementary teachers how to teach reading and writing and other aspects of literacy in their future classrooms. I wanted to increase the amount of engagement students were using in my synchronous learning sessions. So I had a threefold approach. I wanted to use high engagement techniques like polling, having students try things out and get feedback in real time. I wanted to do more demonstrations in the webinars. I wanted to make them basically more engaging, more fun, and I wanted to draw them into the live session so that they would attend the live session versus watch the recording. I also tried some new scheduling techniques and also a new approach using Blackboard Instant Messenger with a book club chat. That was something I have never tried before. And a third component I'll be adding soon is to have students be aware that they can use synchronous learning in their own future classroom teaching. That's something a little bit new and different for most students. So I'll be implementing a tutorial later in this month. I had 4 questions. I want to know, what are high engagement strategies for engaging my pre-service teachers in synchronous learning? So I've had good success with it. I wanted to actually implement more techniques that interact and have students interact with each other as well as myself. I also wanted to, and I'm in the process of looking at their reactions to the high engagement small group webinars. And so later on I will be examining their feedback. Also, thirdly, I wondered, what are their own ideas for implementing synchronous learning in their future teaching? So everybody knows about Skype, but then how can we bring in experts into our classrooms, into elementary classroom settings? And how can students participate in those conversations? So I want to look at that later. That'll be later this month. And then what are the ways students used the chat area in the virtual book club? So if you look at the images on the right, I already use a lot of asynchronous or non-real-time media with students. I use YouTube, podcasts, etc., and they like those because they can go back and listen to them over and over again if needed. They can listen to them when their schedule is convenient. Whereas using things like synchronous learning, the main caveat is that it requires pretty sophisticated scheduling. If you have 50 students like I do, then you get complexity with scheduling. So there's advantages to synchronous, but there's also disadvantages. But I had outcomes. I wanted them to participate in learning course content in a virtual classroom so they would get that classroom feeling. I wanted students to interact and participate with one another in the book club. Whoops, let me go back a little. And then thirdly, I want them to consider the possibilities of synchronous learning for their own classroom curriculum down the road. Okay, so let me go to the next one. Technology used. It was threefold. So Blackboard Collaborate is a real-time system where you can have interactivity. One example is you can use the polls. So every 5 to 7 minutes you can ask either an open-ended polling question where people reply in the chat window, or a multiple choice or a yes/no polling question. Students loved these overall, and I do too, because it's a good chance to see what other people are thinking. I also created structured PowerPoints and sent them out ahead of time and posted them on Blackboard and on SlideShare so that students would be able to easily read through the comment and see what was expected of them. Also, following each of the 3 required webinars, students were required to write a post-webinar reflection, and I'll share those questions in a minute. I used Blackboard Instant Messenger, which is a chat-based tool. It's a familiar task for students. Most of my students use chat outside of learning environments, and so they're familiar with the kind of instant back and forth written only format for that. So I found that was easy because students already knew how to chat. Again, the challenge was the synchronous, wasn't scheduling. It was all text-based, so that was easy. It was low-key. You don't have to show your face or speak. On the other hand, it takes some students longer to type, so there's that constraint. And then there was a study guide sent for them to prepare ahead of time. So just like with the PowerPoint, I had something for them to look at ahead of the chat session. I had specific questions for them to think about and answer during the chat session. And then thirdly, the synchronous tutorial is not yet implemented, but I'll go over examples of emergent synchronous learning tools they can use in their own classroom. Okay, and then on the slideshow, you can go back and see I have the links to the 3 webinars, and you can see the types of interactivity that I did, like polls, questions for chat window dialogue. I even had word searches they could do if they logged in early, demonstrations, try it out, and other applications. I also gave them immediate feedback when I would demonstrate something, and then like asking questions, and then they would come up with questions to ask students, and then I would give them immediate feedback. Well, how did I use the methodology? So students had reflections, and I asked them these questions. What specific resources did you learn about? So I wanted to know what kinds of resources stood out to them. Actually, I skipped the first question. It was, what did you learn? So recap, what are the main ideas? And that's sort of an accountability question. And then the third question is, describe your level of participation in the webinar. So if they watched the recording, they could say, I took notes or considered your questions. I also answered questions when you asked them in real time. And then what feedback do you have on the webinar that helps me to improve the webinar? Also, I thought about, on the right side, you'll see I have professor observations. So I thought about the difficulty of the design and scheduling for each type of synchronous learning. I thought about the level of preparation to set up and initiate the sessions. I thought about the structure of the sessions themselves, and then any affordances or benefits of using the tool and constraints. So here are kind of my takeaways for this. So Blackboard Instant Messenger was the chat text-only tool we used for the book clubs. They were in small groups of about 8 students each. It was really easy to set up and get established, and students were very familiar with that. There was also a lot of interaction on those book clubs. The downside was the pacing wasn't good on the chat session. My timing of asking questions along the way was rushed and probably a little too fast-paced. Whereas in the webinars, it was much more of a great pace, and that might have been my own familiarity with the tool and knowing how to pace myself with webinars. The level of preparation required by the instructor was about the same for the instant messengers and the video conference sessions. I would say number 3, more interactivity can take place during the video conference sessions. The instant messenger is constrained in terms of the context, visual aids, and video use. I think more multimedia is better, and so I'm going to go with the webinar sessions in the future and probably not do the instant messenger chat again unless it's somehow more student focused. And then, so number 4, I won't be using it for book club. I won't be using chat for book club. I might have students set up their own video conference group so they can see and hear each other and have that immediate presence and instant conversation, and I will help moderate those. Pacing was adjusted accordingly for the Blackboard Instant Messenger. I'm sorry, it was not adjusted accordingly. It was really hard to find a right pace for asking questions. Some people were still on the first question while I had moved ahead to the next question, and that wasn't ideal. Pacing was ideal for the interactive webinars. I think because it was a bit more teacher-centered, I was able to pace it better. So consider, whether you want a student-centered interactive activity or a teacher-centered or both. I think it makes a difference. And then using the tool Doodle was ideal for scheduling the instant messenger chat sessions. I will definitely use the Doodle tool again, and many of you probably use that for meetings. It was great. The students were able to use that without asking questions. It was just really easy. So future goals include, I'm going to continue using the instant messenger, but mainly as a Q&A kind of, if the students have a question, They can ask me. It doesn't have to be at a designated time. So I'll continue to use it, but if you see the picture on the right, it's more like if you have a question. I don't do office hours. I find that people have questions outside of scheduled time, so they can still ask me questions in real time through my extended use and availability on Blackboard Instant Messenger, and I send out reminders that I'm on it. So I also want to continue to seek ways to make webinars interactive. I want to increase the use of webinars, so maybe have 5 instead of 3, but maybe make them shorter, like 45 minutes instead of an hour. And I'll continue to use tools for scheduling the sessions. I think that was really crucial to know when people are available to do webinars, especially with very large classes. So here's my contact information. I love multimedia, visuals. I love interactive teaching and learning. I love the way that synchronous learning means we do outreach to students. It means they see our face, they hear our voice, and they have the recording available for their convenience. So those are all great reasons to use synchronous learning. So follow me on Twitter and check out my blog, virtualgadfly.com. Thanks for listening.